Hello friends, today we will be talking about an interesting topic, a debate on privatization of public sector banks. During the Union Budget 21-22, the Honorable Finance Minister has proposed privatization of 2 public sector banks and 1 public sector insurance company. From that time onwards, there has been a great debate on the desirability of privatization of public sector banks and how its impact will be on the banking sector, and going forward how the banking sector is going to shape up. We have seen a lot of rejig after the consolidation of public sector banks from 27 in 2017 to 12 by 2020 April. So that's the consolidation that has taken place, and now the debate is on the privatization of public sector banks. Very recently, after the debate has started, the NCAER has brought out a research paper led by Dr. Arvind Pangaria Saab. He has been the vice chairman of Niti Aayog. They brought out an interesting paper which suggests that all public sector banks except State Bank of India should be privatized to hone their capabilities and to harness the potentiality of the banking system. So that was the opinion of one research paper. In the meantime, there has been a research paper published in the RBI Bulletin, which RBI very candidly said that it is not the opinion of the RBI, but it is the opinion of the researchers who have gone into the work of public sector banks. And that particular paper talks about the significant contribution of public sector banks in taking the financial inclusion forward. Now, both public sector banks and private sector banks, 12 public sector banks now and 21 private sector banks. Many of them have joined after the banking sector reforms have started in 92-93 on the recommendations of Narasimha Committee. Now, both the groups of banks have done a yeoman job as far as taking the banking industry forward and in contributing to the financial inclusion. But the share of contribution of public sector banks in financial inclusion has been much glaringly higher than that of private sector banks. That is what the paper says, and also the data very much says so. So 21 private sector banks and 12 public sector banks together have contributed to the financial inclusion, as a result of which there has been an international recognition for the efforts that the banking system has made in the last 20 years in taking the financial inclusion forward, as a result of which the Findex of World Bank of 2021, it says that 78% of the eligible people above the age of 15 are having bank accounts in India, which is a commendable job. And we also know that the total banking system, the number of branches are about 1.59 lakhs, and ATMs are about 2.17 lakhs, and POS terminals are already they are more than 6 million, and debit cards are about 93 crores. That is the debit cards after the NPCI has started rolling out the RuPay cards, and all the savings bank account holders are almost now given a card simultaneously, and that has penetrated number of debit cards to a new high, and that has taken the banking to the grassroots level. And in this effort, if we see some of the data points about the presence of public sector banks in rural India, where the financial inclusion efforts are now penetrating, we will definitely find a tilt of the private sector banks towards the urban agglomerations. And since the public sector banks are already entrenched in the rural areas after the nationalization of the banks, and after the lead bank scheme was introduced, and after the village adoption schemes were introduced, and when the SLBC, State Level Bankers Committee, has been pursuing for opening of bank branches in rural areas. All these efforts, together with the RBI's liberalized branch expansion policy, has made the public sector banks to penetrate down to the hinterland and serve the people at the bottom of the pyramid. Now, it's not that private sector banks haven't done their job, but they have been steadily going into the rural areas in a measured tone, and the research paper says that the focus of public sector banks have been on social banking, that is to reach out to more number of people, whereas the focus of private sector banks logically are towards maximizing the profitability. So that's the tilt as far as the two groups of banks are concerned. Now, the debate is raising about the privatization of public sector banks. Now, experts' opinion, if you take Dr. Subba Rao, the former RBI governor, he has very recently, in some of the opinions, he has spelled out that the government should have a 10-year privatization policy of public sector banks, so that it is a transparent policy and there should be no knee-jerk privatization of public sector banks. And also Mrs. Arundhati Bhattacharya, who was the SBI chairperson some time ago, she has also been of the opinion that not too many public sector banks will be required and some of them can be privatized, though she was not very specific as to the numbers. Now, when we look at the performance of both the sets of banks, no doubt both of them have done a commendable job as far as taking the banking to the next level is concerned. But public sector banks have been doing a great job in the rural areas and semi-urban areas and unreached areas, underserved areas, and their presence is very much required. When it comes to introspection, we need to look at is it that the very theme of nationalization of banks, that is in 1969, the purpose with which we have done, has it been fully served in the last 50 to 53 years that we have seen the banking system grow? That we will have to introspect. But to my mind, of course, I leave it to the policy makers and the academicians and the intelligentsia to debate on this contentious topic. But to my mind, public sector banks, private sector banks, and among private sector banks, small finance banks, payment banks, then on the other side you will find regional rural banks, cooperative banks, cooperative credit societies, and fintech companies, NBFCs. When they are all coexisting, then I think we need to look at the public sector banks' services and their contribution to the growth of the economy, and particularly when India is hardly hit. It is the blow has come from the pandemic in the last 2 years, which has pushed. I think the estimates say that about 190 million people have been pushed into poverty. So I think we are not in a position now where the services of public sector banks may not be required any longer. So we do require the services of public sector banks because they have a different orientation, they have a different infrastructure, they have a different positioning in the hinterland, and they have a different capability as far as serving the community is concerned. And private sector banks also have a different kind of wherewithal which is very much required for corporate sector, export sector, and urban areas, where I don't say that there should be a divide between the two groups of banks, but the contribution and capabilities of each kind of bank is unique in its own way, and all of them should coexist. And I think we may phase out the ownership very gradually over a period of time and see how the level playing field can be given to both sets of banks. I know that the difference between the public sector banks and private sector banks as far as the governance is concerned is entirely different, and some of the opinion which comes in the research says that the capital infusion that has taken place in the public sector banks, they have not been productively used. But I would say that this infusion of capital goes for the compensation for the social banking that has been rendered by the public sector group of banks. So I leave it to the people to debate further on the issue with the statistics, but sufficient to say that these banks have their own unique positioning in the market, and we will require all kinds of banks which we are having as of today, and they should be energized, they should be made to work further deep into the hinterland so that the enterprise is galvanized to improve the productivity of the economy. That is, the economy should grow, and we should, as far as our aspirations are concerned, we should very fast move from 3.5 trillion economy as of now to, in the next 2 years, to 5 trillion, on way to become a developed economy by 2047, when we will be celebrating 100 years of Indian independence. So to my mind, all the banks, groups of banks are required in a large country like India, particularly when the economy is further diversifying, when technology is playing a great role, and in this kind of a condition, I think a quick change of ownership will shift the priorities of focus, and may tilt the balance, and may also disrupt the kind of progress that we are making in the financial inclusion area. And I think we need to concentrate on imparting financial literacy, digital literacy, and should work very rigorously for the customer protection, consumer protection, and protecting the digital users against cyber threats. I think we need to coexist. So with this word, I would request you to pass on this video with your other friends, and if you have not subscribed, please do subscribe to the channel, so that we will be discussing more about the latest topics in banks, and put the facts before you, so that we will share the knowledge in the area. Thank you so much for viewing the video. Thank you so much.